So just some housekeeping before we get started. If everyone can keep their microphone muted, you're welcome to have your camera on, and we want you to get as much as you can from this session. So please pop your questions into the chat throughout the session, as we'll be taking a few questions after each speaker and then more during the Q&A. I'll start with an acknowledgement of country, and for those who have not heard this before, we do this in Australia to show our respect for the Indigenous peoples of Australia. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the different lands on which we are joining from today. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present. So, official welcome to everyone to the start of Global KM Week. This is the second year running and first time in Australia. So a big shout out to our organisers, Amit and Shu, Dan and Esther, and all of our speakers that are presenting this week in order to make this happen. This year across the globe, there will be 10 countries participating, and we'll have more than 35 sessions to help to increase awareness and interest in knowledge management. And I think for Australia in particular, this is a great initiative, as it's not easy for us to get to any KM conferences. So this really is the next best thing for us to come together and connect within region. So glad you can all make it today. Our first session for the week, we will be chatting knowledge management in industries. And although a relatively broad topic, we are going to hear about what's happening across the industries, and it will also be a great segue to the rest of the week. So for how the session will run today, first up, we're going to meet our speakers. So we will let them introduce themselves and give us a little insight into them and KM within their company. Following that, each have chosen a specific subject to touch on, and we will pause after each to take a few questions, so get these in the chat. Then we will open up the Q&A, and we encourage you to ask any of your burning questions, whether it be for what they spoke on or anything KM related, such as strategy, culture, taxonomy, or anything else that might be topical for you right now. So I will hand over to Sarah to kick us off.
Thanks, Tracy. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Sarah Jacobson. I'm the Director of Knowledge Management at Minter Ellison, which is a large majority Australian law firm, but one of the largest in the country. So obviously in the legal industry, we have around about 2,800 staff across Australia and some small offices overseas. Our KM team is approximately 22 people, and that sort of covers a number of different areas, including sort of precedents, knowledge systems, and research. The drivers and scope of our knowledge management program are really, I think, focused at the moment around enterprise search, document automation, and how do we leverage large language models to create efficiencies for our lawyers. And so they're some of the things that I'm going to touch on today. And we've been sort of establishing or working on a new KM program for around about the last 3 years.
Great, thanks, Sarah. So we will jump across to Aomi, if that's okay. We might still be waiting for a moment.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Nice to see you, everyone online. So my name is Aomi Pereira. My current role is Knowledge Manager, and I work in the renewables industry attached to REST Australia. So REST Australia is part of the REST group, and globally, we have around 4,000 employees working across geographies, but REST Australia in particular is around 200 people. So my role is directly sort of dealing with the 200 odd people in the Australian offices across Australia. Size of the KM team, just to add some context, KM function is relatively new. It's been around 2 years since we started having a KM function. So we have a very small team of 2 people. And drivers and scope, I think we do place a lot of value on lessons learned. And one of the key drivers is, from a renewables project perspective, is how can we improve our project outcomes and achieve success in our projects. And I guess, I spoke to that sort of around how established the program is. This is very sort of relatively new at this stage. Thanks.
Thanks, Aomi. Next, we'll go over to you, Diraj.
Thanks, Tracy. Hi, everyone. I'm Diraj Raval. I work as Manager for Enterprise Information and Governance for a regional water corporation called Collarbone Water here in Bendigo, Victoria. The company is in providing water and wastewater services in the regional community of Victoria. Size of the company is about 450 plus team members. working from different parts of Victoria. KM team, there is no sort of official KM team until I had joined the business 3 months ago. So I'm just one man on the job at the moment, but we are slowly sort of onboarding a few more team members in coming months. The major driver for the KM program at the moment is that information management, which is often used in conjunction with knowledge management here at Colibun, is number one priority for the business, which is a good thing for my role. That will give me a lot of sort of leverage to engage with multiple types of stakeholders and understand their challenges across the business. In terms of the establishment of the KM program, I don't think it is established at all. It is very immature at this stage, which again provides me with an opportunity to sort of bring in a lot of frameworks and learnings from experiences into this role.
Yeah, great, Daraj. And now we will hand over to Aman, who is actually joining us from India. So it is a little bit earlier for him in the day.
Yep. Thank you, Tracy. So sorry I was joined a little late here. I was on that prepared about this one. Sorry, but no worries. My name is Aman Bhatnagar. I'm a director knowledge management here, and the industry is real estate. The size of the company is around 100,000, more than that. However, my role is more focused towards the corporate function of the organization, so which is around 50K of the audiences that we are catering, providing the services and support here. The size of the KM is 8. Again, within the business only that we are providing, though some of the business does have their own KM, but we are providing guidance and support to them as well. So it's a mix and a hybrid kind of model that we are running in the organization. Key drivers for me is in the KM in my organization is the improve efficiency, since we have connected a lot of the accounts here, providing support to them, how we can bring efficiency as well as client satisfaction. So that brings along with that, innovation is the key factor, which we are focusing more here to getting the more innovative solutions from the accounts as well as from within the organization to serve the clients better, and ultimately leading to the client satisfaction scoring here. Yep, how we consider is more we are evolving with the time in the organization. A lot of things are coming with technology front, and focus changes every year based on the feedbacks and the priorities defined by the business. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Aman. And hopefully that gave all our attendees today a bit of an insight into our speakers and what their focus is in their companies at the moment. So I'm going to hand back to Sarah now, if I stop sharing my screen. So I'm going to hand back to Sarah, and Sarah's going to be chatting about something that is probably something that we're all chatting about at the moment, which is leveraging Gen AI in the legal industry.
Thanks, Tracy. So yeah, obviously when sort of ChatGPT hit probably almost 2 years ago now, it has revolutionized some industries, and I'd say that it has had a very big impact on the legal industry. Certainly the potential of what could be done with large language models in the very near future. So at Minter Ellison, we've taken a leading edge stance on generative AI, and we have sort of, I guess, a focus around so building some of our own tools, obviously buying our own tools, but also partnering with other companies in order to develop tools within the firm. So what I wanted to do today was to sort of dive into what are some considerations that you might want to take if you are thinking about implementing some large language model tools within your organization. It's very easy to sort of get caught up in the hype of what these things can do, and wow, they can create documents so quickly. But there's obviously, and I think most of people on this call, particularly if you're in KM, you would be aware of some of the downfalls of these tools when it comes to sort of confidentiality or also just, generating information that's inaccurate. So I guess just to set the scene a little bit, we're focused very much at the moment on sort of rolling out, like I said, an enterprise search functionality. And I think that what the introduction of large language models has done, and this would not just be limited to the legal industry, is to really put a focus on what information you are feeding into these tools. So if you think about a retrieval augmented generation model, so a RAG model where you are uploading documents which you would like to sort of contain a search to, and you want to generate information based on a pool of documents, a big focus comes onto what are those documents you're uploading. And we have a lot of content in law firms. We obviously generate a lot of documents. We have sort of template documents, precedents, through to sort of example advices or example documents that we would leverage on a new transaction to sort of, I guess, reinvent to avoid reinventing the wheel and having to redraft content. So what the introduction of these tools has done is really put a focus internally on what are the repositories of documents that we're tapping into, and what is the quality of those documents. And I guess, from an enterprise search perspective, one of the key principles that we're trying to maintain as a law firm is having a single source of truth. So making sure that, our precedents and templates, even our example documents, are stored in one place and we tap into them using multiple tools. And that can be a little bit of a challenge if you're using a document management system such as iManage that we use, because it is of its high security. And that's why law firms use such a document management system, because we don't want our documents to be to have any breach of confidentiality. But on the one hand, it also makes it difficult to open that up to other tools to tap into. So it means that sometimes these repositories get duplicated in other places, meaning that there's a challenge for people to know which is the most up-to-date version. If you are responsible for keeping a version updated, there's obviously inefficiencies in having to update multiple versions. I guess the other challenge is, we always want to maintain and encourage a culture of knowledge sharing. And so some of these tools, if you're creating a tool that allows people to build their own repository of their own tools that they can feed into a RAG model, again, it sort of can encourage knowledge silos where people are building up their own silos and not sharing. I guess the other thing that I wanted to quickly touch on was around sort of precedents and document automation systems. So we are sort of focused on rolling out a new document automation system for our sort of precedent documents, where you might have a sort of questionnaire and that you're creating or you're generating a document which is very consistent. So each clause looks the same for a particular transaction if it's relevant. And in law firms, we want things to be consistent. So we don't want to be generating a new different clause in a contract every single time. And that's sort of something that's a little bit tricky for some people to get their head around is, why would you not just get ChatGPT, for example, to generate a whole document in, 60 seconds when, you might otherwise need to go and dig around or have to draft something up yourself. And I guess the answer to that is to maintain that consistency across the firm. And it actually reduces the review time. So if you were to generate a new document using ChatGPT, you would need to sit there and review before you sent it out to your client, review every single clause to make sure that it was consistent or that it fit your transaction. Whereas we're more focused on, for some transactions, creating document automation. And so I guess it's getting the right balance between what are the documents that you're going to automate and keep in a sort of template form, and what aspects of those would you open up to a tool that would allow you to regenerate clauses using a large language model, for example. The sophisticated tools that we're using, you can highlight a clause and say, redraft this to suit these circumstances, and it will do that. But I think you want to maintain, reduce the number of times that you're doing that just to the times you need to, and not creating whole documents. And I think just to touch on enterprise search quickly, I think I'm really excited about what large language models can do, particularly for creating vector search. So at the moment, sort of most search functions are based on metadata. So you're just basically searching across fields that already exist in the back end. A lot of people may already be using semantic search, so using more natural language to be able to type in a request for a document. And then I think with the addition to those sort of search functionalities to using a large language model, we'll be able to find documents and find content within documents much faster in the future. So I'll leave it there and see if anybody has any questions.
Cool. How long are you guys still in a test phase at Minter Ellison, Sarah? Or are you rolled out broadly across the business?
We're just finishing a pilot phase on our document automation platform, but we've had a lot of success with that with our banking and finance team. We've automated security finance document, which is hundreds and hundreds of pages.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
one more question, Sarah, in the chat that I can see from Nicole. She wanted to understand information governance better. So her question is, which information governance pillars has provided the best protection, control over Gen AI from your experience so far?
Yeah, sure. So when you talk about information governance, Nicole, was there a particular aspect of that you were thinking? Like, are you talking about data governance in the sense like retention, redaction, confidentiality, or is it more around the tool itself and where the data is hosted and processed, for example?
Very good point, Sarah, because I know there's so many different pillars. But actually, for this one, I'd like to specify security coming from Minter Ellison. There's a lot of confidentiality, as you've said. So, yeah, maybe the focus would be on the security pillar for information governance.
Yeah, sure. So so for the tools that we buy, so third-party tools, we're incredibly strict as to which tools we will procure. And so, for example, many of our clients require that all of our data needs to be hosted onshore. So we won't even go near a tool where they might host or process the data offshore. So that's sort of our first hurdle, if you like. And then we get to a second layer where there are certain clients or certain industries of clients that we won't at this stage use generative AI tools for, just for extra security. So I think it's sort of, and then we've obviously got some individual clients have specified that they don't, it's quite interesting. Some clients are saying, we actually want you to use large language models because we want you to make your work more efficient. And then other clients might say, well, actually, we're still working out what it means for our organization and we don't want you to use it yet. So just knowing who those clients are and sort of, I guess, making sure that those teams are not using that on those would be the best thing. And then obviously, no personal information. So we don't put any personal information. So we'll use redaction tools. And then we've obviously built some internal tools ourselves, which are super secure so that we can use that for some of those exceptions that I just mentioned that we wouldn't normally put into the tool.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. I think we could designate a whole session to this, right? Because we're all at different stages with Gen AI and exploration. So I think, in the future, a designated session to hearing from people that are a bit more progressed would be super helpful. So thanks for your insights there, Sarah. Next up, we have Aman from JL, who will be talking on how KM in the real estate industry is evolving in this fast-paced technological world. Thanks, Aman.
Aman, you'll have to unmute yourself.
So sorry about that. It is early morning and you still need a coffee. Yeah, thank you, Tracy, for having me on the forum. It was nice talking to see all the other participants as well. At the topic you have mentioned about this, it's how KM we are involving in real estate sector. So with the growing complexities in the data and in the past-paced technological world, real estate is also not untouched on this. The question is how we are sharing and capturing the knowledge to make the decisions more streamlined and smooth in this world. KM has also expanded to include AI and large learning models to make the decisions more accessible and knowledge and through and actionables. The AI, using AI and the machine learning, we are predicting the analytics on the market trend. And also, not only that, and also we have implemented the virtual and augmented reality for showcasing the properties to the customers, which makes things quite easy sitting in a one small space and can visit multiple multiple properties at the same time. So what we have done in that, so we have implemented or added the AI to most of our knowledge repositories to transform the data into a more actionable results. And feeding the real-time data to these knowledge repository to monitor them and predict changes and provide so we can provide the dynamic services to the customers. So that's the very key important, and how we are serving the clients and making it things easy for them to even showcasing in a one dashboard or how their properties and manage and environment is doing and performing. We are the key areas that we have. The real life scenario is on the space occupancy reporting, how the users are behaving in occupying, how they're coming on the frequent basis, what's the dynamic services that's happening, how we are utilizing our existing space, and what we need to do it to manage it better. Also, the key piece is on the managing the critical assets for predictive maintenance, so which saves a lot of downtime, bring operational efficiencies, and of course, cost saving to the customers as well as for the organization. And with the dynamic shift of this in the industry, we need to stay agile, and we are refining the key KM strategies time to time based on the client's feedbacks, inputs that we have got. So key pieces, that's why I said that our priorities changes based on these feedbacks and the need of the hour. So collaboration space, having the real-time data is quite essential in connecting the employees to drive innovation as well as improve in decision making. For this year, and I guess we were working on the prior as well, was focusing more on the innovation and capturing the innovative solutions and standardizing the best practices, which helps in bringing the operational efficiency and also the customer satisfaction on that. What we are doing is, so I'm working on a crowdsourcing platform to capture the innovation and these best practices, so that how we can leverage this, and we don't need to invent the wheel, as simple as saying in the care world, leveraging the existing knowledge that someone has already developed or using at their account level or client level, so we can share this across the other audiences in the organization. And of course, not all ideas are classified as innovation. Most of the suggestions that comes are categorized as the best practices, even though which is good. However, this collaboration space gives inclusion movement for the client, so they can share their thoughts, their expertise, the experience that they already have in that area, which helps in developing the product and servicing our client better. So that's where in some scenario we may have able to convert those suggestions and innovation into a live service for the client. So that acts as one of our good information to capture, and which we are leveraging as well. Yep, that's what's majorly I have in my the points that I have to cover it. Happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Yeah, if there's any questions from the audience, please pop them into the chat. But we did have a pre-submitted one that came through, Aman. So obviously someone else working in the real estate industry. What are some of your common KM challenges that you face in the real estate sector, and how can they become overcome? How can they be overcome?
Sure. I guess it's a KM has a standard, and we're all going through a standard kind of challenges of knowledge sharing. But bigger challenges we are seeing is a data silo, the capturing the data, and that's been residing a lot on personal computer space, and the resistance to share. So encouraging the people to share the knowledge and telling them the importance about that, so that the people information is not outdated. That the organization or other people would get within the people in the organization would get the up to date and information, and we can implement a friendly KM system in the so we are not like, if we are not touched by the technology as well as the common challenges that we are facing across the KM. So having a collaborative space, a culture, so that they can come and share the thoughts as well as expertise what they have and the information that they come across. So that's what we are doing. So keep our content, data relevant and up to date in the organization. So that's the key factors we are still working and addressing in the
And I think,
real
like
estate.
I think, like you said, the challenges aren't necessarily unique to a particular industry. When you get down to the crux of it, it's common across all industries, just with a slight uniqueness to your industry.
Absolutely.
So we might hand over. Well, I'm going to actually hand over the host duties to Amit now.
Thank you, Tracy. And thank you, Sarah and Aman. Aman, that's actually a really good segue into our next topic. So we have Naomi from, excuse me, we have Naomi from Renewable Energy Systems, and she's going to talk about a recent initiative about harnessing the power of lessons learned in the sector. So Naomi, handing over to you.
Thanks, Amit. Really nice to see you again, everyone again. So I think just delving into my topic, just a little bit of context. The renewable industry in Australia has seen significant amounts of growth and transformation over the last few years. And I think just for context as well, when we talk about renewable energy, we are referring to grid scale, solar, onshore wind, offshore wind, battery, and hydrogen technologies. I think when you look at renewable projects, they are very complex in nature, and a typical renewable project can take a large number of years to complete. And I guess this complexity, sort of, when you look at what actually drives KM initiatives in this industry, I think this complexity of renewable projects, one of the key KM drivers is organizations in this space are continuously wanting to improve and enhance their project outcomes. And as a result, lessons learned become really critically important to the industry, because as you all know, as KM practitioners, learning from our past experience enhances our efficiencies and drives innovation, ultimately leading to better project outcomes. So if I was to just touch a little bit on my current experience with RES Australia, as I mentioned in my introduction, it is a very knowledge management function in RES Australia is relatively new. But even when I started with the organization, even though they didn't have a knowledge management function, there was a very strong focus on lessons learned, identifying lessons learned. And what the leadership team wanted to do was, by embedding a knowledge management function, they wanted to really sort of see how we could learn as an organization using these lessons, how we could share the learnings and embed the learnings across the organization, and sort of make sure our project teams are enabled with, sort of empowered with these lessons, so that they ultimately are responsible for enhancing project outcomes. I guess just stepping a little further away from the industry, renewables industry, if I look at my past experience over the last 2 decades spanning recruitment, IT, and professional services, I think one of the key themes I've seen across industries is that organizations within their KM function they have a real focus on lessons. Let me rephrase it, have a focus on identifying and capturing lessons. But unfortunately, most organizations look at lessons as a tick box activity. And I think although they spend a lot of time identifying and capturing lessons, they generally end up in some sort of repository or database. And I guess that sort of prevents organizations from really tapping into the power of lessons learned. And then sort of, I guess, what I really wanted to talk to you about and share today was around my current role and what we've done as an organization and how we approach lessons learned from a KM perspective. So one of the things that we've done is feeding in our lessons learned into a very structured continuous improvement program. So as with any continuous improvement program, we have a systematic approach to identifying areas of improvement and a root cause analysis, designing and implementing a solution, And then most importantly, continuously monitoring the results to make sure we are achieving our objectives. So I guess as part of that mindset and sort of developing a continuous improvement mindset within our organization over the last 2 years, I think has really helped us enhance our culture of knowledge sharing and learning. And I think that has been sort of a really positive aspect of this program. And also that's enabled and empowered our team members to be willing to share their successes as well as their failures across the organization. And I think, sort of looking back and reflecting at some of our key continuous improvement program initiatives over the last 2 years, we've really seen teams come up with really creative, innovative solutions, which have really impacted, which have really enhanced our project outcomes. And I think that is the core objective of our knowledge management focus at the moment with RES, is how can we improve our project outcomes. And I think, so I just wanted to share sort of, our approach and how we've linked lessons learned to our continuous improvement program to actually make sure we are learning as an organization and embedding those learnings within the organization.
Thank you, Amy. So before I jump into one of the pre-submitted questions, I want to throw in a question of my own. I'm pretty sure with the renewable energy sector, there are going to be a lot of satellite locations. So how do you ensure that the lessons learned reaches people in those remote locations?
So within our organization, as I mentioned, Amit, we have over 4,500 people spread across different geographies. So one of the key focus, although I focused on lessons, and one of our other key focus areas is also learning from other geographies. And then again, to a point, Australia, for example, if you take offshore wind, we are relatively new to that area. But whereas in Europe and other countries, they have many more years of experience within that industry. So one of the things that I think, although lessons learned is a key focus, I think one of the things that we will focus eventually as we mature in our KM function is to actually identifying subject knowledge experts across the organization and finding better ways to network and create communities of practice so we can really tap into those expertise from the other geographies and bring it into Australia.
Right. Thank you so much for that. Now coming to the question, what strategies do you think work best in the success of a continuous improvement program?
I think, to be fair, we need to have clear objectives, well-defined objectives of the continuous improvement program, and we make sure we share it across the organization. So when we set out on sort of with implementing this program, we had a few really clear objectives that we wanted everybody to focus on making processes better, not perfect, because sometimes you get sort of, tagged into the making things perfect, and, the solution teams continue to work on continuously improving, but then they don't really implement the solution because they're thinking of being perfect. But yeah, so to focus on making things better, and then also to focus on incremental approaches. We continuously are evaluating our implemented solutions and then making minor tweaks. So that is the focus. And also when we bring together a continuous improvement initiative, when we identify teams, as much as possible, we try to bring in teams from different diverse teams. So bringing those diverse perspectives. So we are empowering employee co-creation. So when we identify some area of concern, we ask employees, our teams, to come up with the solution, because at the end, the buying, or when the solutions co-created by our rates of success is much higher. And then finally, we have very strong leadership support and endorsement on our continuous improvement program.
Thank you so much for that, Amy. Next up, we have our last speaker, Dheeraj from Caliban Waters, and Dheeraj has experience across a multitude of these industries. So Dheeraj is going to share his experience about knowledge management and how that has shaped up in different companies. So over to you, Dheeraj.
Thanks, Amit. Nice to see you, everyone. I think I'll take this opportunity to kind of, just reflect on my about 12, 13 years of knowledge management experience working across, 4 to 5 different types of industries. And I just wanted to share with everybody the types of challenges that I faced during my KM journey what were some of the solutions that we worked on or implemented within the business, and what kind of impact it had on the operational teams or businesses as a whole. So if I reflect on the first introduction into KM world was through a rapid research program that we were doing at a business outsourcing company back in 2011, 2012. And so rapid research was all about, finding the information quickly and working on, let's say a couple of slides and sharing it with our global, consulting client. And the biggest challenge that we faced over there was with all the support that we had to provide to the client, there was a lot of, chaos around, maintaining or creating knowledge repositories. So knowledge repository was the first ever word that I had, heard within the knowledge management, topic. So not as soon as I got introduced to knowledge repositories, that was the first thing that I wanted to work on. So during my time there, we worked on, creating and maintaining a few internal KM repositories, which included, maintaining proposals, repeat work, insights across industries, etc. We trained several users on how to use those repositories to access quick information and, contribute to the repositories at the same time. And I think after a couple of years, those repositories itself were made accessible for global teams, which helped them in supporting various types of clients across different industries. The impact that it had on some of the operational teams was the efficiency through these knowledge sharing mechanisms helped shortening the research cycles by 20 to 30%, for the teams. I then moved on into banking, wherein we focused more on digitizing knowledge management. So I worked for a bank here in Melbourne a few years ago, which, although they promoted themselves as a digital bank, but they had with no physical branches, but they struggled a lot with maintaining their knowledge management system. And the knowledge that they possessed was fragmented across different systems and storage locations, which led to various inconsistent processes. And worst of all was, knowledge management was treated as a side function or, a subset of process governance or business process management teams or change management team, IT. I saw it all in a period of just 2 years. So, that did not sort of, demotivate me in any way, because I was kind of given an opportunity to, start from a clean slate. So I worked with, various operational teams, contact center teams within the bank, and we sort of, moved approximately 1,500 to 2,000 articles, about 800 process guides, etc., onto the knowledge management system. Initially, the system was, was used only by a handful of people, but with regular training and workshop and sessions, over a period of 18 months, we were able to increase the sort of the active user base from just a few hundred to over 1,000 team members. And to ensure, that all this hard work that we had put in did not go into waste, we also created a KM vision document for the bank, which I hope, after I had left, was implemented in some shape or form. Fingers crossed. Then I moved into technology outsourcing, wherein building a KM function from scratch was needed. The challenge was that there was no formal KM structure, causing knowledge silos, inefficient information, knowledge flows across operational teams was not happening effectively. So there was a need to establish a KM framework, process guide templates, work instruction templates, customer-facing teams, training programs. The company was using Confluence as a knowledge management system, which in my view is predominantly a project management system. But we still had to work only on in that system to sort of establish better governance processes and ensure tighter control on all the Confluence pages and knowledge that was created for that team. During the period of just 1 year, we were still able to sort of train about 50 plus team members in the operational teams and ensure that the knowledge sharing was done in a better way. Prior to joining my current role, so I worked in consulting industry, where outside of the client projects, there was a need for a centralized knowledge hub to connect practitioners across the country and making it easy for them to find relevant information and collaborate on various types of projects. Now, as you can imagine, consulting companies, depending on how old they are and how long they've been in the business for, there's a lot of tacit knowledge flowing in the minds of leaders. And it was not documented or linked properly across various pages or systems. So that led us to the design and launch of centralized knowledge management hub on SharePoint. So we used existing technologies that we had, and there were a lot of metadata standards, governance, and best practices that were put together so that even a new joiner who's just joined the business could easily find the right kind of information in the first go. Thus, we were able to sort of have most of the relevant knowledge sources for about 600 plus consultants, including new joiners in one place. And just quickly reflecting on my current role in the utility sector, like I mentioned earlier, there is no knowledge management function currently, but I am just trying to sort of prepare an enterprise-wide information strategy and governance, and how it can align with the broader business strategy and goals. So just working collaboratively with about 30, 40 odd stakeholders across the business, and just trying to identify the gaps and just use the existing Microsoft capabilities such as SharePoint and MS Teams to the best use, so that we could just sort of continue using these tools in the knowledge management area going forward. That's it from my end.
Thank you, Dheeraj. And I think hearing what you just said, you've highlighted so many common concerns that we all come face to face on a, I wouldn't say daily basis, but we come face to face regularly. I would ask you, based on your experience working with these different industries, where have you seen KM being prioritized most and delivered best?
I think it was prioritized most mainly in the banking industry. And the reason behind that was that there was already an established KM system, which is LivePro. I'm not sure if many of us have heard that system before, but that is predominantly a contact center knowledge management system. I think the system was so powerful that we were able to use a lot of dashboards and reporting capabilities of the system to be able to present to various teams and just showcase it to them what was working and what was not working for them, what kind of knowledge articles or pages that teams were accessing, how often were they doing it. It was a great knowledge management plus a communication tool for the operational teams.
Right. Thank you for that, Dheeraj.
Thanks, Amit.
And quickly checking if there are any questions in the chat for Dheeraj and Naomi.
No, Amit, I cannot see any. Yeah.
All right, that's great. So, Naomi, Dheeraj, thank you so much. I'm going to open the floor for question and answers. So, team, please feel free to put in your questions in the chat, and we'll pick them up with our speakers here. But I'm going to start with one question, and I'm going to open it up to all the speakers here. So, what are the common trends that you've seen in your industries that are coming up in the game field? Let me nominate. Dheeraj, why don't you go first?
Sorry, was that me, Amit?
Yeah, I was just volunteering you.
No, sure. Sorry, there was a bit of drop. I think trends from my industry, which is water industry, is there is a lot of curiosity around Gen AI tools. Over the past couple of years, ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot have come up. So there's a lot of excitement, but at the same time, there's not much knowledge available within the business to be able to identify the best use cases. So what I'm also working on the side is with the Copilot team at Microsoft, we are trying to build some solid use cases within the water industry. And if there are other water corps within the country who are already using, Copilot or Gen AI tools as a whole, we could, do some knowledge sharing sessions with them, because the biggest challenge will be security of the information, within the business. So I would say definitely the use of Gen AI more and more.
Right. And would anybody else like to jump in and add on?
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, I guess we are also facing a similar. So now it's like a race of getting to the AI to implement it in everywhere in the industry. But yes, we have done a lot of things in this putting this AI on our repository for knowledge retrieval and providing the trends and insights reporting for the customer. And also providing a personalized knowledge delivery system. And I guess like Dheeraj mentioned it, we are emphasizing on data security and privacy. So that's a key concern if everyone has that, though we are having an in-house systems, not an open source platform that we are using, pulling it up. So that's how we are addressing that information remains within the organization, not being shared across in a public domain.
Yeah, I would just add to what Aman said. I think this is probably happening in most industries, but certainly in legal. Obviously, with the introduction of large language models, a very sort of general focus on them, and co-pilots of general productivity. I think what we're definitely seeing now and what we're doing is really like honing down into specific use cases where you can build out a tool, maybe pulling in multiple data sources from your own organization and building something very bespoke that turns the dial for your organization, but may not be of any value to anybody else. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that once people sort of understand and think about what are the possibilities of what some of these tools can do. And as they become more sophisticated, obviously that becomes even more relevant.
Thank you all. We do have a few questions in the chat. So first up, we have Masa, and I hope I've got your name right. What strategies can we implement to effectively encourage team members to actively share their knowledge and expertise on SharePoint?
I'm happy to throw in first. It's obviously a good segue for Stan Grant and the Communities of Practice session, which is running tomorrow. I think, building communities of practice and probably sort of more in teams, but obviously the data is housed in SharePoint. I think depending on what sort of organization you have, something I learned from one of the senior partners here was that people don't like to be named as experts, and sometimes people, if they're known as the subject matter expert or the expert, they tend not to want to share their knowledge as much. And so we came up with the concept of knowledge authors, people who had come up, who had actually created some content on our SharePoint with sort of knowledge topic pages on particular topics. Obviously very tricky to get people to take ownership of that content and keep it updated. That's obviously a challenge going forward. I think it's about that push-pull piece, isn't it? So a lot of the time you sort of build things that you're sort of pushing out to the universe or to the organization. But if people don't have a reason to go to that place to retrieve the knowledge, it can kind of sit there and get very dusty. So I think trying to create something where there's an incentive for people to go to that place, even if they are the subject matter expert, so that you create that sort of community where people are being active. Something we did internally with SharePoint is on those topic pages is actually stream news, so like Google News articles or news articles, so that the page was constantly updating, even if people weren't updating some of the other content. So it looked up to date when they went there. I think that's been helpful as well. But I'll let somebody else jump in with their thoughts.
Sure. I think I'll just quickly add 2 points here. One is I think SharePoint itself is very powerful. Some of the sub tools that SharePoint has is like wiki or document library functionalities, wherein you could sort of centralize all the documents that you try and access on daily basis, and the metadata is very powerful as well. So SharePoint search capability, metadata, wiki, I think all these tools are sometimes underutilized. So identifying opportunities where you could start using some of these functionalities a bit more. The other element that we are currently doing at Coliban is identifying power users. So a lot of times, each business area or team, there is one or two people in the team who are power users of SharePoint. So identifying those users and working with them and sort of making sure that the team is trained within SharePoint so that they know how to best use the system as per their requirements is something that we have to continuously identify and explore.
Right. Thank you so much, both. Next up, we have Esther. What do you think the future of KM in your sectors would look like? We know Gen AI will be key. What else do you think is on the horizon? Any takers?
I would say agents. I mean, it's still Gen AI, but agents to be able to do things. Obviously, you would have seen the Tesla, the robot Optimus, whatever it's called, released on the weekend. I think that robotic process automation, which we use a lot of that internally, like even our finance team, they don't do bank reconciliation anymore. It's done robotically. I think sort of robots, agents, virtual agents, I think there's going to be a big rise in that space. Yeah.
I would agree. But do we think that there is enough clarity of understanding between robotics process automation and AI? Because people seem to think that they go hand in hand, and they do go hand in hand, but there is a slight difference about where one stops and the other takes over.
Yeah, I think that's the point that Lynn Murnane was making in the chat, is that you're seeing a trend, Lynn, that some people sort of don't see the need for KM anymore because we've got Gen AI. And I have to be honest, I've had some pretty difficult conversation with some partners internally who just think, well, we've got this, amazing thing now. Why do we have to focus on that? Whereas for us, we realize that it's even more important now than it ever was. I don't know if you wanted to expand on that, Lynn, or...
Yep, and just to add one point here, we are the gatekeeper of the information. We need to monitor and keep the things up to date. Though AI going to search about those repositories on the AI or the large learning model on which we have implemented these bots or the AI tool. So we have put them in a very directed approach there. Search and check only these section of the organization or the knowledge repository, not to search everything, so that it gives a very up-to-date and bright and accurate result. And that's where we are keep managing and up-to-date, connecting with the SME subject matter experts in the business to get produce those results or accurate information feeding to those repositories. So that's where we still the KM will still remain relevant in this area.
Yep. Thank you so much. One more question. What are some useful ways you have captured knowledge from retiring employees in your industry?
I can jump in. So I think traditionally we looked at knowledge as sort of exit interviews as a way of capturing information from retiring employees. But I think that strategy is really not very successful, because the moment after someone submits their resignation, they are detached from the organization and they don't really see a value in sharing what they know. So I think some of the strategies I've used in my past experience, especially with Sydney Water, was proactively identifying people before they actually retire. So looking ahead to 5 to 10 years sometimes, and identifying the critical roles and mapping the critical knowledge components that's required for that role, and ensure that we have proactive ways of transferring that knowledge, be it via knowledge sharing sessions, mentoring, and actually trying to, where possible, it's not easy, but where possible, try to document knowledge from those experts in a way that we can sort of transfer and share across the organization. I think that's quite successful.
Thank you, Yumi. So keeping in time, we're just going to move on to the next bit. So as you guys have heard from all the speakers, I would just like to mention that as we part after the session, your questions don't have to stop. You can always reach out to our speakers and the committee members directly on LinkedIn. You can find us on LinkedIn. And as you can see, we are spread out across different industries, so we can answer questions specific to your industry as well if needed. Jumping into the next slide. This was the end of today's session, but tomorrow we are going to talk about communities of practice. So we have Stan Garfield. I'm pretty sure everybody is aware of Stan and his work on LinkedIn and communities of practice. And we also have Kim, Andrew Pope, and Rachel joining us tomorrow. So we look forward to having you here 12 noon, Sydney, Melbourne time. And then in the following days, we'll have tacit knowledge and AI in knowledge management industry. We also have in-person meetups in Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne. So we have picked our locations. Come over, we'll grab a drink and have a chat about what our problems and solutions are for knowledge management. And with that, I would like to just open up the floor. If anybody has any other questions, come off mute. And if you want to share something, please feel free.
And there is also a short survey. So it will be amazing if you can take the survey. I've just pasted the link. Yeah.
Thank you, Anshu.
Just very quickly, I'd really like to thank the organizing committee and Tracy and Amit for an excellent job hosting this session. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ayami, and thank you to all the speakers for
Thanks,
making
everyone.
time. All right, so
Thank you, everyone.
It's great that you are sticking to time. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in today, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.